Hello, this is Christian. Welcome to Angular. In this video, we'll be doing the post or create of the CRUD operation using the HTTP client in RxJS to post or to add data to the database system. So here is our scenario. We'll be creating a form to add some new data, and then we're going to send the data through the subscription, right, through RxJS, and Angular is going to send that off using the asynchronous call, send that post to the server, and the database will be updated with the new data. So let's go and see how this is done in Angular. So here is our app. In the previous video, we did the read operation already, so we're able to retrieve this data from a remote site that is really just another site in the local machine here. Let me load that up so you can see as well. This is the site that we requested from this port number. It's a local host. Of course, you also fetch from a different server as well if you want to, but in this example, it's just from localhost. And this is the URL that we fetched. Okay, so now we're gonna do a add operation. So that means we're gonna click the add flight here. We have this new form, and we're gonna fill in some information here. We click submit. It's gonna add the to database, and then when we click on the show items, show list, it should be added to the list as well. Okay. So again, I'm not doing any validation here. We'll assume that everything is correct. All right, so let's go and do this operation. And this is our list already. So I'm good with this. I'm going to close this now. And now let's load the add component. This is our add form. It's already filled in for us. We are submitting a ng form because submit the data field. Notice that we are not binding to a local variable at all. We're not doing two-way binding. We just bind the value to the form. Okay. If you don't bind it and you don't add the ng model here, it's not going to work. So just make sure you bind that to the value, and then whatever you type here will be sent to the form object here, and we access the f object, which is all these data sets, and inside this function called handle submit when we submit the bottom here. Okay, so that's the view, and then the add here. So notice we haven't created any objects yet. We have this one just to show that if it's submitted, then we're going to turn that on to have a message on the screen saying it's successfully submitted and so on. So that's the first thing, is to inject this service, this flight service over here. Let me close this. This is the one that we want to inject, this flight service. Also, I need the, we'll see about the flight class, but mainly just the flight service. So injecting right into the constructor here. Private variable called flight service. It's common to have the same name as the service name, so you don't make a mistake, because you can inject a lot of services actually. And so it's imported already for us. We're good to go. Now we need to just basically perform this submit here. Okay. So when we submit, we need to call its service, and one of these functions, as you can see here, is called the add, which is going to add one. So we're passing to this function the flight. So that's just the payload, and we're going to send this over to this endpoint, which is this link here, and has no parameter, right? And then we'll just add the payload as the second parameter to it. Again, just make sure we have to subscribe to that, okay? And I'll show you what I mean when we subscribe. So then when the data comes in, we need to go ahead and create, well, basically just load that function, call the function and pass the data over. It's really, really simple because it's all set up already. So now I just to say this dot flight service, dot add flight, and I'm going to add in the flight. Okay, so it's be the f type dot value, and all those will be done. So if you just do it this way, it's not going to work. Okay, so you have to subscribe to it. If you don't subscribe, then you are not really invoking this function to actually go in and make the post. Okay, it's dead right here. It doesn't go anywhere else, right? So you have to subscribe to it. So I'll show you what that means. So if we just do this, and if I save it, just to make sure it does perform that, we want to also put the flag to say true, for example. Once we submit it, then we'll say this submitted is true. I'm just going to show that it does go through, so it actually invoked this function, okay? And at the same time, you can console log this to the log, the f values, so we can see what those data are like. Okay, so let's save this. And again, make sure your app is running. So let's go over here and refresh my page here. So again, my app has only 10 values or 10 sets of data. So I'm going to go and put numbers in here, some flat here, whatever it is, UA error, just some fake data will be a one-way from ORD to JFK, and the date would be today or whenever it is, and so on. So click submit, right? You see that it says successfully added. Now if you go to the console, and it would say object, and here's our data, right? This is the payload that we sent over to the server, supposedly. But then if you go back to the flight, show flight, you see that it doesn't add it. It's not here. Okay, we can also show the database. And let me open my little database as machine here. This is the SQLite Studio. This is a database that Django uses in the app. And this is the data set that we're pulling from. So if I go and refresh that again, you see that it still says 10. Right? We did not update the database at all. And that's why I mentioned that we need to subscribe. So that means you have to, before you close this, you have to subscribe to it. So use the dot here, subscribe. And again, just put that into a new line. It's just easier to read. So in this subscription here, you have 3 parameters, right? One is the next, which is the payload that is coming back. And then 2 is the error, and 3 is the completion. So again, if you put, for example, A here, it will tell you what they are. So the data coming back is sent from this next here. The error, if there are any error messages, and then the last is just the complete. So we're gonna omit those 2, just use for the payload. Okay, so if you don't pass anything, and if you're not expecting anything back at all, that's fine. You still have to subscribe to like this in order for this to work. But because I want to make sure that once it's successfully been added, then I will invoke this inside this function here and not outside, because this might be fake, right? So make sure it really did happen. So I'm going to go and say data, and this is going to be usually in here, and I'll put this 2 inside. Okay, so it's going to update my status to true, and I'll console log that to the console. So this data set coming back, usually it's the same data that you receive. If the other end of the spectrum on the server side, if it sent anything back at all. If it doesn't, then it's going to be empty, but well, probably not empty, has other stuff in there too. But if there's no payload, you don't get anything here. But in this case, when we're just posting data, it may send back the data. I don't remember what it is, but we can check it out. So let's just say I want to see what's inside the data as well. So I'll put here data, and I will put here the data. So let's see what's in there. Okay, this is the data from the form. So I put here form, and so we know what they are. Okay, so now I subscribe to it, and then this time it should invoke that service. The observable should be invoked, the function should be called, and send the data over. So let's go back and do it again to our form, and let's go and add another one again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Flight 1, 2. Maybe use a different one. LX 1, 2, 3. Airline will be LX. I'm just making this up. That's good enough. Be a one-way depart from Chicago to JFK, leaving on the 16th, coming back on the 23rd. Okay. So boom, submit it, and we go to show, and hopefully it's there. So there you go. Okay. So we have a number 12. The previous 11. Actually, it did go through and touch the database, but then it was not posted because we did not complete the whole process. We did not subscribe to it. So that means like, oh, don't do it. right? So now it's here, and then we can also look at the console to see what sent back was sent over. So this is the actual form, this is our actual data, and this is the one that was sent back to us, which is the same information received back. Now we see that our ID was not recorded, okay? And this is because I think when I wrote the app, I had it so that it would not take the ID. It would just generate the next ID. And I think this is like it's like a primary key. But I did not, I think I did not enforce it to be restricted. So it will just disobey, disregard your ID anyway. But anyways, the data is sent over and we recorded it. So we know that for sure. And we can also check in the database to make sure that it's really there. Let's run this again. And so there it is. All right, so that's how add operation works when you do this using the observable or asynchronous call. Just make sure again you do a subscription. If you don't subscribe, it's not going to work. If you have any questions, please let me know.